Excellent. Looks like we are good to go. Well, welcome everybody to this edition of Article and an App. It's our Westcliff University Light Center Reading Club. I'll be telling you a little bit more about that. This is our first one, so it's wonderful to have you all here. We're going to be talking about cultivating collaboration and utilizing technology as a pathway to engaging learning environments. Now, a few notes here before we get started. I want to go over a little bit of etiquette. I do want these to be engaging sessions. I would really want to hear from each and every one of you, but please do keep your microphone muted until you are ready to talk. You could also use that hand raise button if you want to, or simply unmute your mic. We are recording this, so just as you know, with all of our webinars at the Light Center, you are agreeing to be recorded. By being here, you're also welcome to keep your camera off if that makes you feel more comfortable. But of course, I would love to see each and every one of you. If you have questions or comments, you can use the chat box always. And as I mentioned, it's going to be an engaging session, so hopefully you also have time to ask your questions live. And the slides and recording of this meeting will go in our next PD2Go newsletter, so do look out for that. So again, welcome to our first session here. Now, this article and an app offering is a professional development offering to you all. It's a collaboration between our Light Center Professional Development Department, which I am a part of, and the Light Center Library Department. Specifically Jody Crawford, our wonderful Library and Digital Resource Center coordinator. Our aim is to share at least one article and at least one app or tool or website each month in this engaging series. This is part of our 2024 professional development initiatives that we want to offer you all. Your engagement and feedback is greatly appreciated. We will certainly be chatting about that. I will be asking each of you to share your thoughts on this session. I'll be giving you a link towards the end of our time together. Speaking of our time together, I want to offer an opportunity for me to get to know you as the professional development specialist in the Light Center. I don't get to talk to faculty all the time, but when I do, I always like to get to know you, get to know your name, learn a little bit about you, what brings you here today, why you thought this session would be interesting or something you wanted to take a part of. So either live, you can unmute yourself or simply type in the chat your name, your department, how long have you been teaching with Westcliff University. My name is Joni Mitchell, and I am Professional Development Specialist in the Light Center, the Professional Development Department. I actually started here in August of last year, so I haven't quite made a year just yet.
Hi, Joni. My name's Steve Owlett. I'm with the College of Business, and I've been with Westcliff about 1 year and 7 months.
Wonderful. Great to have you. Sorry, I think I froze up there just a little bit. Who would like to go next?
Hi, Joni.
Hey.
I'm happy to see you. And my name is Dr. Geraldine Goodstone, and I'm in my 10th year with the university, which is amazing. It just goes by so fast. And
Wonderful.
I've been with the College of Business during that time, and I'm now full-time faculty.
Wonderful to have you here, Dr. Goodstone. Thank you. Yes, I'm glad you were able to make it.
Thank you.
Hi, Johnny. My name is Rahul, and I'm with the Department of Technology, and I've been with Westcliff University for about 6 months or more than 6 months. Yeah, glad to be here. Thank you.
Wonderful. So sorry about that. I think my internet cut out just a little bit when the first person was presenting himself. Dr. Owlett, was that you? Or Dr. Johnson?
I think you heard me.
Yeah, I think it cut out towards the end.
You know, you acknowledge myself here, so I think I'm good.
Good. Yes, my internet cut out, or I'm experiencing some sort of issue here, so I'm sorry I didn't catch you. Let me go back up into the chat. A lot of people throwing some comments into the chat here. 2 years in the College of Business. Dr. Papadopoulos, let me know if I said that correctly. Dr. Johnson has been with the college for 7 years. Dr. Hiwakawa for 4 years. Let's see, 2 years at Westcliff for Dr. Anna Laban. And Dr. Salami, 8 years. And ooh, wonderful. Some of our affiliate institutions, I think we're getting a new name for those, that have been working on the coil research. That's wonderful. It's actually a really important part of when we're talking about student collaboration in the classroom, right? Maybe hopefully you'll have a chance to share some of that with us. And Cynthia, wonderful to see you again. Yes, just started with the computer science department. I'm so glad you're able to make it. Hello, Sarah. And not sure how long you've been here with Westcliff. Well, that says something. Wonderful to have you here. And then Dr. Constant, 4 years. Happy Tuesday indeed. Great to have you all here. Please keep engaging in that chat. Again, it's just really good. You know, a lot of us are in different places, different spaces. Sometimes, you know, if you make it to campus, one of our many campuses, you may see each other from time to time, or being in a department meeting together. So it's just good to get to know who you are working with. So thinking about our article. So first, I just want to share a few things in the chat in case you wanted them handy. Yes, Professor Park, great to have you here. So as I mentioned earlier, we are doing our professional development initiatives. I wanted to make sure I included our flip book. If you haven't seen it, please do take a look at those. It's just giving you some great information about the Light Center Professional Development Office, how we're here to support you, and some of the offerings that we will be having this year. The other thing I want to include here, for those of you who don't have it handy, of course it was in the Google invitation, is a link directly to the article that we read for our reading club today. And I also have, for those of you who want to go straight to the PDF, I'm going to pop that into the chat as well. Yes, we love that flip book. Dr. Shawaheda really outdid herself with that flip book. Not to mention all the content in it, but that's a team effort. I believe it's that hazing software. A question in the chat, what software was used? I believe it was that hazing. I could connect you to Dr. Shawaheda, and she can walk you through her process for that. We use a lot of different design tools to kind of create our materials. So she may have used some other tools in that process as well. So I want to open this up for you. This is not my time. This is all of your time together. So wanted to, after sharing that article, maybe you reviewed it, maybe you looked at it when you first got the Google invitation. And what were your first impressions of the article on these collaborative learning practices?
It was just interesting to see how the article covers different techniques that could be used in increasing collaboration, and their positives and negative sides of of what causes poor collaboration. Like the article talks about different, for example, I have the document in front of me. I'm trying to
Yeah.
bring the different techniques that they used, or different ways they compared. Like, for example, lack of collaborative skills. The students themselves do not have enough skills on collaborating. The other obstacles that they found in collaboration was free writing, competence status, and that I've seen in the class as well. Some students are highly capable of articulating their thoughts. Some are, depending on their major, some students are knowledgeable of the content that's been covered in the class, so they may speak more about it. And because of that competence status, other students feel timid or less confidence in collaborating during group sessions.
Right.
So that's what I was able to understand from the article that you shared.
Excellent. Anybody
So,
else have any
so Joni,
first
I was thinking
impressions?
as I was looking at that article, it was an interesting piece to pick because one, it was international. So
Mhm.
that does, tie in a bit to our international student population to listen, to perhaps what students think about collaboration, the importance or lack of importance of those skills. But of the teachers, they were pre-service teachers. And so they had really very, very little experience at creating an environment that is conducive to collaboration. And they hadn't learned that skill set yet, I think.
Right.
And that could jade some of those results.
Absolutely. I thought of that. I love that you pointed that out, Jody, because I think that that's one of the things that stood out to me is I really wondered how much experience, and we will get to the cultural component. That was actually very intentional. And yes, thank you, Rahul, for also breaking down some of the trends in the article. So if you remember correctly, or if you haven't had a chance to read it thoroughly, there was basically 4 obstacles that they found in their research. And it was a very small study. I think it was like 20, it was less than 30 students. And they wanted to, the researchers' aim was to gather information from both teachers and students to get their impressions. And so when you go back and look at the article, please do read some of the student quotes, because I do feel like that is where a lot of the meat and potatoes is, just things that I wouldn't think about as an educator. But certainly the 4 main obstacles that they mentioned were lack of collaborative skills, as Rahul pointed out, that free writing, that idea that some members were just there for the ride, the dominance of what they called high status students. And I really had to go in and find that definition. I found it very interesting that they used that language. And then the distractions due to friendships or relationships within the groups and what that caused in the group collaborative dynamics. And so kind of looking at those cognitive outcomes, the insufficient instruction on collaborative skills. Seemed like a lot of the students in this study didn't understand why they were collaborating. And I don't know if any of you can relate to that as educators. And the focus on just, how does this fit in with our assessment? How does this fit in? And I know we go through that here as well, right? What does this do with my grade? And how does this person's approach deal with my grade and that type of thing? Just want to hop over to the chat real quick. Dr. Mooney said the article is 6 years old. There are several more recent articles that delve into more current research and practices for collaborative learning in higher education classroom. Overall, it's sufficient and good general introduction to those who might not be familiar with collaborative practices. Excellent. If you have some of those articles, Dr. Mooney or anyone else, please do send them over to the Light-PD email. We're always collecting research and resources. This was just one that I happened to see and I thought was interesting. And again, having that, you always kind of do the comparison, right? When you go through a study like this to kind of what your experience is. And I've taught at 4 campuses. And so I started to kind of think about the different diverse elements of my students and what it's been like to try to get them to collaborate in the classroom. Dr. Morgan added in that he's been here since 2023. Wonderful to have you here. Dr. Winnie said the student component was very interesting for sure. Yeah, definitely one of my major takeaways. They were also pre-selected students, which leads to the fact that these students were more likely to be active, which was sought out. That's interesting. I didn't actually get that impression, Dr. Johnson. Do you want to add a little bit more about your impressions of that? Did you find that in the comments or?
Kind of. I mean, it's just when you're this.
Can anybody hear me?
No, I don't think, I think Dr. Johnson is breaking.
Oh, it's Dr. Johnson's. Okay, yeah, this has happened twice. Okay, so it must be his. I'm always worried it's me. Whenever I have a Zoom meeting, I'm like, wait, must be my internet. Okay, hopefully he will get back to us here.
But
Maybe he'll
Joni,
tell us.
Sorry,
Oh, go ahead, Jody.
So Joni, like I was thinking that maybe with Dr. Johnson, and I don't want to speak for him, but
Right.
sometimes when we pre-select students, right, we are pre-selecting the best students, or we're pre-selecting with some sort of bias. So if we knew that we were pre-selecting students specifically for collaboration, maybe we picked the most collaborative students to give us the feedback, or maybe like, there was some criteria that could have been a little biased rather than just, hey, you're the first 23 random students that said, yes, I'll do it. Like, I don't know that we know that information. So maybe Dr. Johnson just kind of thought, hey, they picked the best, right? The ones that were the most active. I mean, I think that just, for example, during WASP, we just had our WASP visit. I was asked to select student work. So I got together with my full-time faculty member, Dr. Money, and I said, Dr. Money, would you please select some of your best student work to showcase for WASP? So I was biased because I didn't give the visiting committee a sample of an A paper, a B paper, a C paper, a D paper, an F paper. I said, let's give 5 examples of good work. And so that same kind of bias could have happened if I was choosing students for collaboration. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, even if we went through that process that you just said, where we just asked all the students who wants to do a survey and an interview and share your thoughts, you still might end up just getting some of your more outgoing students, right? Like, how are we creating, and this kind of speaks to some of the apps that we're going to talk about
You will
today.
be getting,
So this is
you
really
will
good.
be getting those who are going to be like that.
Right.
There's just no doubt about it.
Yeah.
And this is a problem. Business research has been clouded with this for a long, long time.
Sure.
There was a bank that they were asking. They sent out emails about things that people wanted on their app. Well, the problem was the average person who responded was old, because you folks won't respond to it. So people were upset with the changes in the app because they weren't responding to the questionnaire.
Right.
It's similar, like we see this all the time, like in voting. Young people don't vote, old people vote. Therefore, there's a skewing of what's going to be active. So just the fact you're asking something, you're going to have a skewing. This goes back, like I said, like reminding me of Zimbardo in a way, where the exact wrong group was a representative of the prison. There couldn't have been a worse choice for the prison than what he chose. So that's to the extreme. But this is what happens when you're not something. It's not like I had a friend of mine who was trying to teach a new way of teaching for reading. So she chose Foothill Elementary because they had 3 second grade classes, they had a control group and 2 other groups. So at least all the students were the same. There was nothing, they didn't select the volunteers out, so that things wouldn't get skewed and you would have better results rather than selective results, which unfortunately happens all the time. I'm not saying, I'm just pointing out, as someone who teaches research, you're default into what's wrong with the studies type thing. So the first thing we go to is, okay, this isn't random, or that you can't make these generalizations, or whatever that happens to be. So I don't mean to be negative.
I think you always have to be willing to apply that knowledge when you're reading something, even when you're just, I mean, I teach this, so I teach a lot of media and media bias. And this is something that I talk to my students about, like, what kind of pictures are you being shown? What kind of, who are they quoting? Who are they going to? Are they, if a news, journalist goes out and gets a quote, are they coming to the rowdiest wild person, or are they looking at the person in the corner who maybe actually observed the whole thing? Are they talking to the person who is most affected by the incident? So maybe they're more emotional. Were they looking for some kind of messaging there? I think that kind of selection is something we always have to think about, certainly in research. I appreciate you bringing that up as well. And I think that also plays into, what other maybe underlying things maybe weren't being said. When you read an article like this and you notice something like that, you can kind of think of like, okay, is there information missing? Which kind of actually goes. Go ahead, sorry.
I especially when they don't point it out. When I look at limitations, delimitations, and so forth, if you point it out, I'm good with it. If you don't point it out, that shows that you're being biased, that you're not even acknowledging this. I have a bigger issue with that than if you acknowledge these things. Well, at least you understand the bias and you have that in the back of your mind as you go through some of the data. But when you don't even acknowledge it, that's suspicious.
That's really good to point out. Yeah, I actually did not read much on the limitations, and I'm notorious for that. which is weird because I teach this. Sample population bias, Dr. Howe said, absolutely. Bergson's paradox, thank you. And when we're thinking about that, then kind of goes with the second question there. How does the article's discussion on collaborative learning and its challenges resonate with your own teaching experiences? Did you notice some things in this article when, you know, they're talking about those 4 main obstacles to collaborative learning that you don't really experience in your class, or you experience some other, you know, obstacles? You know, maybe, you know, depending on the modality of your class, that might also impact it. So how did the article that or not just the challenges, but really, you know, anything that they talked about in the article resonate with your own teaching experiences? Remember, if you don't want to unmute, you can throw some thoughts in the chat.
The I was while I was reading the article, what came to my mind or what resonated to me from the workshop that we had last week, was it on Friday? I was running a workshop, and there were about 15 to 20 students in my class, and most of them were paying attention to the instructions, and I was trying to make it more more interactive as possible by asking for input, by asking for what would they do in that situation, kind of stuff. But there was one student, I think she had her mindset from the beginning, right before even the class started. She had a laptop in front of her open, one laptop, and the other laptop on side. So she had 2 laptops open for some reason, and I had no plans of making them work on assignment or doing some work on laptop. It was mostly just interactive session. And throughout the class, like the lecture was for 1 hour 30 minutes. I noticed that all she was doing, she had her headphones on, and there was no Zoom session. It was a on-site class where I was doing my presentation and getting input from other students. And one of the things I was trying to do was a role play where I could have them. It was based on data science and how data science projects are run, what are different team members involved in running a data science, project manager, data engineer, and all different roles. So we were trying to do a role play. If you were a project manager, what would you do? So I was kind of getting frustrated because she was all checked out. Like, one of the things that uh, the article says about free writing, basically that's what she was doing. Like, let me just go sit in this class, get my attendance, and I'm done.
Right.
So I went through two scenarios. In the second scenario, I was like, I need to get her attention. So I had to I usually cold call when I feel like students are not giving their input or something. So I had to ask her to shut it down, the computer, because the class is going on over here and not on the headphones, because there is no Zoom session for that class. So I had to interrupt and try to get her involved forcefully by like asking her to like shut it down and pay attention to the class. Even then, because it was so she was all watching whatever she was doing, she couldn't catch up with the conversation because she wasn't paying attention. So when it came time to interact, she was all just I couldn't answer, give any input. So that's just wanted to share my experience about where I can relate to the article, but it's a challenging situation. I would like to hear more about how other instructors or professors address these kind of things.
Yeah, free writing in the class, free writing in groups. Who experiences it, and what have you done about it?
I think a better question, who hasn't? I mean, whenever you're talking about teamwork, have
That's
you ever
true.
dealt with a freeloader and everybody in class and everybody raises
Absolutely.
their hand?
Right.
And because a
Right.
lot of times they can't. What it comes
Right.
down to is if we're in a group and we have, if I'm going to pick on Dr. Salami, if Dr. Salami says, you know what, I'm going to take it easy because I know you guys care about your grades, so I'm going to be at the beach while you make sure that our grade is good. That happens. It's always been that way. We
Yeah.
tend to tolerate latest in the work environment, but there's a certain degree when I'm looking at some of the stuff, it honestly reads. It seems like every decade has its own almost buzzword. In the 90s, it was
Mm,
synergy. Everything was synergy, and they take it to an extreme. And then it was teamwork. In the early 2000s, it was teamwork. We had to do everything as a team. We have to go to the bathroom as a team. Everything is a team. And then last decade, it's been
bathroom.
diversity. We're
Yeah.
good things about it, and then we overdo it. And there's areas where it doesn't. It's not good. But we get in this
Yeah.
mindset. So it's interesting because this is one of the things for those of us who have attended PAC meetings. This is one of the things that's always that they address, that students don't know how to work in teams. They don't know how to work collaboratively. And because most teamwork in school has been, Dr. Park, you do chapter 1, Dr. Salami, you do chapter 2, Dr. Meyer, you do chapter 3, and somebody's just sewing
And
it
we
all
call that
together. And that really
delegation.
works.
Hmm.
That's why, in fact, Dr. Sherm is the one that developed the Smart Capstone to have a project where they have to work together. So it's interesting because I think, like anything, I bet you everybody here can see, like, in this class, this would really work, but it wouldn't work in all classes. It
Of
just
course.
doesn't.
Of course. Yeah.
And then there's the element. The one thing I think all of us have had is, when you teach two classes and you have one class where they're all working together and things are fine, and the other class is like you've got their genetic defect twins on there where nothing works and you can't get them to work together. You can't get them, and
I
it's
was
the
like, where are
same
you going
class.
with that
Like
term? I didn't know where that was
like
going.
one class is all A's and a B, and then the other class you're lucky if you can get a C out of them, even though you're teaching the same.
Mm,
We've all dealt with that. I think
what are the
everybody's here has dealt with
differences?
individual
Yeah,
classes make. But again,
absolutely.
so I think that I could definitely see this as situational, and being able anything that we can to help with that work so it doesn't become just people doing things separately. And it is a skill, and it's a skill that businesses
Yeah.
have claimed in the PAC meetings. They all mention
Mm,
they can't, students can't write, they can't present, and they don't know how any collaborative skills. And fourth was always like emotional intelligence, which may go along with collaboration skills.
certainly to some degree, certainly in terms of like communication. I'm gonna hop over to the chat real quick. Let's see, have a couple of suggestions here. In the final presentation, all must sign the bottom of the slides they worked on and all must present and talk. Yeah, if you just have a requirement and you say this is how you are being graded, this is going to impact your grade, you do tend to have a little bit more participation from what I've experienced, what I've seen as well. Let's see, Dr. Ellett said, I make sure to review participation requirements in the syllabus and reinforce the importance of participation and collaboration. I also mentioned that everybody's participation will be based on their preparation and participation, their own individual. And that's kind of hard for students sometimes. And the next question there, we're talking about root causes of these obstacles. I think sometimes students just don't understand that you have to be individual in the group as well as part of the group. Or maybe they choose not to remember that. But I think a lot of times it does come down to helping them understand that. Let's see. And Dr. Johnson's 100% accurate about the emotional intelligence factors. Student athletes, sometimes I let them team up with their sport teammates and sometimes I split them up. That's actually really good to think about. If you already know who in the room is aligned in a way or another or already knows each other, sometimes that's hard, especially when you're first starting out a class or if your class is really short. It's kind of hard to see where those relationships are, where they exist. But certainly if you have some clues, then it is sometimes good to break them up a little bit. I do like to tell my students the importance of collaboration, which really appeal to the section of this study that talks about just the general insufficient instruction of collaborative skills. And again, yeah, like Jody mentioned, it seemed to be both on the teachers and the students, the instructors and the students. in terms of applying those things professionally, in terms of understanding, why that social interaction is important. So I actually tend to give my students a little bit extra materials as supplementary materials on, why you're working together, how I expect you to work together. I want to see problems being solved. I want to see that social interaction that needs to come out of your project. I want to see everybody's voices in this project. I love the idea of having them sign the bottom of the slides they worked on. Where's your voice in this assignment? Where do I see you individually as part of the team? And then where's the creativity? That's a big part of collaborating that people, I think our students don't always think about, is you have to be creative. As Dr. Johnson pointed out, it can't just be you do question 1, you do question 2. Sometimes when you're doing quick assignments in class, that's just how it goes, okay? But if you're doing a bigger project, you really want to be able to encourage your students to, collaborate and share ideas. Okay, if I'm writing the introduction, 2 other students, maybe 2 of my peers maybe are reading it or editing it, that type of thing. If we work on EQ, perhaps everyone getting them to be more participate would be easy. We actually had a class in which this is directed at increasing this. If we build on the building blocks of collaborative work, it might be easier to integrate. Yeah, that information. The other thing I do survey my students, for better or for worse. I do classroom surveys on the teams. I have them rank each other with a little rubric. I don't know if that's something that would work in your class, but I just like them to give feedback on each other. How attentive, how effective were you as a team, and how did you view your peers individually? Again, if you have a group of friends, sometimes that doesn't always work out because they give each other stellar marks each and every time. So, all right, any other thoughts on these questions? I want to move on to our next slide. All right, let me know. Some other classes or questions, excuse me, that I wanted to kind of pose to the group. We talked about specific obstacles, strategies. Thank you. Please do keep those coming. We really want to think about that. And then this actually, Dr. Johnson just kind of hit on this. What can we do as an institution? What would be your wish list of, if Westcliff were to provide this, what kinds of changes, innovations, activities do you think that would improve collaborative learning practices here for our students? Anything that you think we could be doing better as an institution? Sometimes as faculty, we don't always get to talk about that because, we are all teaching our classes and coming and going. But it's really important that we think about, okay, what is something that we can offer? Game-based activities. Could you tell us more about that? A little bit more on game-based activities. Of course,
Happy to.
Yes.
For example, if we meet them where they're at, we get to know, sometimes I make analogies based on the sports that they play or video games that they played or games they like to play. Because I do a self-awareness activity at the beginning of class, so I get to know the students. What did they grow up around? There's a few questions that I ask in the self-awareness activity. So that's kind of my classroom assessment technique. And then find games and then have them do the games first that are fun and playful so that those build the cohesiveness of the team, the trust and all that. And then go into the academic and then kind of steer them into the harder stuff.
The work. Very good. I love that. I think, too often I have seen faculty who in that first class or that first week of class, one of the things that we are big on here is that inclusive learning, right? And that involves getting to know your students a little bit and knowing some about them. Even if it doesn't apply to the class, like sometimes students are like, I don't know what to say. I'm taking this class because it, fulfills a requirement. What do you really want to know about me? I want to know anything, everything. What do you do when you're not in class? What do you, if I let you have your laptop open, what would you be looking at right now? Would it be related to this class or not? So certainly, yeah, I think I love, gamifying things, game-based learning, game-based activities that have an objective in mind. A lot of times when we talk about gamification, and I could talk about gamification all day, I also do a little bit of instructional design, so it's one of my favorite things. However, It's not all meant to be this, fun. There needs to be an objective in mind. So if your objective is get to know my students, know a little bit about them, be able to apply our collaborative activities, that is a specific objective that you want to think about how you're reaching there. So, and peer discussion, Rahul, do you want to share a little bit more? What do you mean by that? We all know what it is, of course, but how would you use it?
Yeah, going back to like, it's just about breaking the whole, if you have 20 students, breaking them into smaller groups and give them kind of a case study where they could go through the case study together in small groups and then brainstorm and come up with ideas, and then make someone as a lead from each group and have them be a representative for that group and share the thoughts about the answers or the decisions they came up with. I think that would also help. And I've seen that at our university, professors already do that. So that's just, I just wanted to put that up there.
I love it. Yeah, I think one of the things when I do that, especially in the live setting, I always let my I don't like calling them low status students, but that's what they called it. My lesser performing students. You put them in a group and they kind of sit back, walk around and say, hey, it's your job to prepare that representative. Just because you've already chosen the person who's going to talk and they have lots of notes doesn't mean that you don't have something to make sure that they're prepared to say, and let them know that they do have a role. And going back to this idea that collaboration and group work, it's the same thing. It's another thing I teach on is you're going to have this dynamic your whole life. Every group you're on probably is going to have a dynamic where one or two of you sit up front, you're doing lots of the work. One or two of you kind of somewhere in the middle, one or two of you are slacking. And so what is the role of each individual person? How are you, if you are that person who is more outgoing and has the idea for the project, is happy about the project, how are you bringing in those, performers? Maybe they're sitting back on the sidelines, but maybe they have really good ideas, really helping them break down what this collaboration should look like and how they all have a part in helping to make that collaboration happen. Let's see. Evidence shows groups of 6 or fewer recommended for effectiveness. Yes, I've actually heard that before. Thank you for that. No meeting should be large that 2 pizzas can't feed the whole group. I like it. Never heard that before. Thank you. Forming, storming, norming, performing. I could probably figure that out. Do you want to elaborate on that, Dr. Papadopoulos?
Happy to. Anytime a new group comes together or anybody joins a group or not, they form, they storm, which is fight, and then they get to the norming and then to the performing. But in 8-week classes, you don't have that much time. So you kind of got to get through these phases pretty fast. So get the groups together, let them fight it out a little bit, and kind of norming is, hey, okay, you're this type of personality, you're this type of thinker. Okay, that's how we're going to work together, and then work together and deliver. It always happens whenever this happens in families, it happens in classrooms, each different, every time like a younger kid goes to a new grade, they're with their teacher, forming, storming, norming, performing. And then with our students, if we're on 8 weeks, that's pretty fast. They have to go through this process pretty fast because they have to they've formed with their professor and classmates, and then they have to form, storm, norm, perform in whatever group they're in. So it's kind of a lot for 8 weeks.
Certainly can be. Yeah, very true. Love that. That's really interesting. I'm thinking about the apps we're going to talk about, and I'm like, actually, yeah, that's really interesting. One last question on here. Oh, go ahead.
I just wanted to piggyback on that. The model for that, Gersak addressed group work and studied hundreds of different groups. And what was weird was no matter what the group, no matter what the length was, they don't hit their stride until the halfway. Didn't matter if it was an 8-week group, that means 4 weeks. If it was 12 weeks, it was really, really interesting. If they were working in a group, let's say, again, this is the problem. If you have an 8-week class, they're not hitting their stride until week 4. If they're in a cohort, well, they're not going through that whole process over again. So this is what tends to happen. And for some of us who actually were at universities, they did that. The first couple of classes that we had, it was struggling. After that, work got much better, much quicker. The storming, everything was compressed because they've already done that. They've already done the norming and all that other stuff in previously. But if they start new courses every week with new groups, everything she just said is true, and then they're not going to hit their stride till week 4.
That's interesting. I actually just realized that, yeah, I had a semi-cohort model in my in one of my degrees, one of my grad degrees, and that really happened. Like, we had like the first 3 classes together, and then it was almost like a new wave of new people came in, but we all took the same elective that they offered at that time. And all those new people were bumping around. They were mad at us for dominating the conversation. We'd say, oh, okay, go ahead and keep talking, you know, share your ideas. And, oh, never mind, I don't want to talk. It was just so much conflict. We had not had any of that experience in the class. I'm sure maybe there's a little bit in the beginning, we just didn't notice it, but it was so in your face. And I think it was that reshaping, that reforming of the group, right? Like, so yeah, that's interesting. I think I never really thought about that. Anybody else have any thoughts? What about on this last question here? Considering the study was conducted in Vietnam in context with specific cultural dynamics, how do you think cultural and contextual factors influence the effectiveness of collaborative learning in your current teaching environments? So we've talked about this a little bit in terms of, you know, how have you seen, kind of this idea of, the free writing students, students that are lacking collaborative skills to begin with, some of those EQ skills that we talked about. And, what about distractions due to friendships? I definitely saw that in the athletic example. I thought when you mentioned that, Dr. Papadopoulos, that was something that I was like, oh yeah, actually, you would be able to tell and you might see them. Do you find that your students at Westcliff kind of have that, where they're like, we're working in our friendship? So in the article, they talked about how being friends with people in your groups kind of caused some distractions. And they also had something that they called kind of dominance of the high status. We'll call them highly effective students compared to the students who were maybe more introverted, weren't contributing as much. How have you dealt with those kind of factors? Or have you seen them? Yeah, Dr. Jensen, a collectivist culture. Sure, it mattered. Absolutely. That was my first thought.
I think it could go both ways as far as having friends in your group is it's a tricky one, because if they're academic friends, like if they're school friends, sometimes it could actually make you perform better, but sometimes it could also be really distracting too, or it can be very intimidating, like there could be an air of competitiveness. So you kind of have to see. I always kind of like the first couple of times I put them in their friend group and see how they are, because some of them are very like performance oriented, and then if they goof off, then I'm like, oh, this is not going to work out. And sometimes with these kinds of people, I'll actually pair them with an opposite personality, like totally opposite, and then they get really serious. They get down to work.
That's good. I'm glad you are able to make those observations. I certainly find, so most of the teaching I do now is in the online classroom, and we do have synchronous sessions, but it's really hard for me to tell over Zoom.
It is hard online, but I like to give people a chance and not just break them off and just be afraid of the friend thing. So I always give them a chance the first couple of weeks, and if it's just not working out, or if it's not bringing the entire group up, then I know that that's that kind of friendship. That's, it has to be outside the classroom.
Yeah.
But yeah, online is a little, unless you're in all the breakout rooms, it's tough. I agree.
Sometimes I can find patterns in breakout sessions. Oh,
Mhm.
okay, yeah, those two really, ooh, okay. Oh, they know
Yeah.
each other. Huh, interesting.
Yeah.
They had a class together before.
Right.
Let's see. This is I'm just gonna hop over to the chat real quick. Thank you for adding those thoughts in there, Dr. Chiu. At Westcliff, we have a mix of students who come from collectivist and individualist social backgrounds. Yeah, so sometimes that's even a challenge, right? When you have, it's part of our goal of being inclusive and creating those inclusive learning environments. Just even be able to recognize, if somebody, maybe we kind of categorize them sometimes as like introvert or extrovert, but sometimes it's more than that. When I have worked a lot with living abroad and teaching overseas and noticing those cultural implications and noticing also how they hit me was really important as an educator. So something that I might look at and say like, oh, that's a behavioral issue, it actually wasn't, or it's a choice that they're making, actually wasn't. It was the influence of that culture and the way that that individual felt that they needed to perform. Whether that's eye contact or talking, raising your hand to talk or not, and that type of thing. Dr. Johnson said a lot of it depends on subgroups. Subgroups reaches 50% is definitely a problem. Interesting. I'll have to think about some examples of that. If you have one, let me know. 48 Laws of Power summary: friends and tyrannical and advice is to hire enemy to get a job done. The in-group, out-group phenomenon can take hold and become a serious problem. Definitely. We have to think about those group behaviors. Excellent. We are running low on time, so I'm going to move on, but definitely if you have some thoughts, please hop into the chat. Now, if you read the invitation, hopefully you read it. It was long, I know. Sometimes Google invites from our office are short, sweet, come join us, boom. Sometimes they're a few paragraphs long. This one absolutely was. I wanted to make sure that I shared a few apps and addressed some of the collaborative tools that we could be using. Now, of course, many of you probably see the Zoom link on there and you're like, yeah, I know Zoom, but specifically looking at practices with the annotation features. And hopefully you had a chance to look at that link that was included. I'll go ahead and pop that in here as well. Let's see here. Add those ready to go. So these are the links that went out in the Google Chat invitation because I was trying to hone in specifically on some apps that would be, helpful here. The Zoom link there, it goes specifically to the annotation page. And the reason why I wanted to kind of start there is, again, everybody looks and says, well, yeah, we use Zoom, we use breakout rooms, we use maybe the whiteboard, but are you using annotations? And it's really interesting how you can have students, give them the ability to flag certain things, to collaborate together in that live space. Miro, if you had a chance to check that out, I have used their templates before it's specifically that education. A lot of these and a lot of the apps that we will talk about, because I do get some questions when this invitation first went out, I received a few questions about, well, do you have to pay for some of these? But most of them, in fact, the ones that I am sharing this year have some sort of free usage. So, maybe you don't know this because you get it through your institution, but even Zoom has a premier level that you have to pay a bunch of money for. Obviously, you don't have to pay anything. And that's true for each of these apps and any apps that we'll talk about in this series. They're going to have some options you can play with, you can use. Included poll everywhere there specifically for some of the visuals that you don't get in Zoom polls, like word clouds, which are really fun and really engaging. And you can actually have students work together over that. You can actually have them record their Zoom sessions together. I believe our students have that capability. Well, they would individually anyway. Mentimeter is super fun. That's coming up in another talk. So thank you. Yes. And Kahoot, specifically, I know if you've been going to any of our webinars lately, you probably have seen Kahoot in action, specifically for collaborations. You can actually create quick teams on Kahoot. And so these were just some of the tools that I wanted to share in terms of the technology and thinking about engagement, collaboration, what new tools can we learn? Anybody take a look at these, maybe when the invitation went out, or have you used them before? And what has your experiences been?
Kahoot is fun, but you need to learn how to go, it takes a minute to figure out where to hit the buttons, right?
Yes.
So, because I'm
Especially
quite
the clever.
competitive, and I was in trainings and I was like, oh, hit it, you know? And then it's just like, but it's fun. I like Mentimeter, and then if I know that I have 28 students on their phones, then, and I'm asking them to do something, I can see on the screen, because I sometimes use it in person.
Right.
I'm in person, and then I can see them, and then I'll be like, well, there's 5 of you, all of you are on your phones, and there's 5 who haven't answered, so.
Yep. Similar features in Poll Everywhere. So actually, that's one of the things I like about Poll Everywhere is regardless of what kind of poll you're doing, they could do it from their phones. You give them a QR code, and I just find that with a lot of students, anytime you're encouraging them to pull out their phones in class, it can be a good thing. It can increase that engagement, and they can also start to create their own polls, their own responses, within their groups. Again, all of these can be used for individual. They can, kind of be used to kind of gamify if you have an activity, creating teams, or either if it's not like deliberate teams like on Kahoot, then you can actually just create like tables of teams, and see and kind of look, because I know that Poll Everywhere will tell you who's involved and who's not. And so thinking about apps, some of the things I want you to think about, even if we don't have a bunch of time to talk about, is how can we effectively integrate collaborative learning tools into our teaching practices to address the common obstacles to effective student collaboration. All of these tools really do help some of your introverted students. So that's something that you really want to think about, and it just can help really create some inclusive opportunities. I actually have met very few students who don't like technology, and given the demographics of our college, and even with that, it's an opportunity to teach them. So each, not all of these, but certainly Miro, possibly Poll Everywhere, but certainly Zoom, our students are going to need that for their professional lives. And so that's one of the things that if they're like, oh, I don't want to be on this app or something, occasionally I'll hear this. I always let them know, like, this is helpful to you, like down the road, you'll be able to use these. Given the tendency to focus on cognitive goals over collaborative skills in the classroom, as noted in the article, how can we ensure balance between these goals and using too many tech tools for collaborative learning? Do you, as a professor, and this is really to everyone in the room, have any concerns about making things too fun in your class or too technology based? Is it distracting? And what are some solutions, if you don't personally feel that way, for faculty who might feel that way?
I would imagine it depends on the purpose of what you're doing it. I mean, there's going to be times, like you say, you're getting to know everybody, you're looking for something fun. If that's the purpose of it, it's like a reference. What's the purpose of it? What are you doing? What do you plan on doing with it? So if you have a particular goal that you're trying to accomplish with it, it should be fine. If you just are playing with it for the sake of playing with it, well, that's when things can really get awry.
Yeah, it's like any good classroom planning, right? You want to play with these tools offline, even figuring out where to click. There's nothing that says you can't form a group of 3 friends. Even sometimes when I'm trying to test something out, I have quite a few friends who are educators. I'll say, hey, I want to try this out. Can you get on a Zoom call with me? Or I'm going to send you a code right now, hop in and tell me what you think it looks like, how it shows up to you. Being able to have those kinds of relationships where we can do that, then it means my students don't get that first version. Excellent. So yeah, one thing that Dr. Johnson said, we need to use tools. We only use tools that we are comfortable with. And that's kind of part of the professional development aspect of this, is opening up those tools and taking a look and saying, hey, can I get some help? And, you have to remember that at the Light Center, we are always here to help you. I know Dr. Shawheda has gotten on a Zoom call with faculty in the past who've emailed and said, I really want to be able to use this tool that you mentioned, or I saw something where Zoom could do this. Can our Zoom do that? I'd really like to use it. Always reach out to us if you need that kind of support, because we're definitely here to help you. And then accessibility is the other thing that's worth thinking about. We don't have too much time to get into it today, but how are we preparing our students for using these tools? Sometimes we have to make sure that our students are ready to use them. One of the things, I always like to let students know, I don't like to spring collaborative work on them, especially if it's an activity. So I might even have something where if I do some sort of outreach, or maybe I mention it at the end of a previous class, hey, next week, be ready with your phones, or at the top of a class, if you have a longer class, make sure your phone is charged. We're going to be doing some teamwork together, and just letting them know, maybe they've never seen the tool before, having an info sheet on how to walk through it. And each of these websites, don't be scared to take screenshots right off the website and create handouts or what have you for your students to kind of show them, like, here's where I want you to click. This is what I want you to do. And lastly, I want to make sure that we also think about our Capri framework. Obviously, when it comes to collaborative learning, we're going to be hitting a lot of these areas, but certainly, as I highlighted before, especially relevant, I like to connect tools and technology and always collaboration to, like, these are skills that you're going to need in your careers, no matter what they may be. I teach a range of students who are going into quite a few different fields, and so we like to sometimes I'll really point out, like, yeah, there's, if you actually talk to folks in the industry, you will see this need for collaboration, this skill, and being able to bring that, effectiveness on teams, or as Dr. Johnson said, whatever term we're using, whatever buzzwords we're using for the interviews at that time, being able to bring that skill is really important. But I think looking at this image here, I know there's a lot on that slide. This is really, you can think about the ways that you can use some of these tools in collaborative activities, and under the instructional practices there, and certainly in the inclusive category of the framework, part of the framework as well. Any other thoughts, questions, concerns?
Can you share? I was trying to screen capture this, but I keep getting like the pop-up from the bottom. This infographic, it's a good summary. Is this somewhere that we have access to it?
I think so. It's at the end of the last Capri course, the Capri revisit course. That's and it will go out in these slides, so you'll have actually the slide. Let me see if I have it handy though. Let me see here. I got 3 minutes. Don't leave yet, folks. I don't know that I have it. Oh,
I'm just trying to find a way to screenshot it. But but the bar, the Zoom keeps,
cutting it off.
Bottom.
Yeah, this is my second time using 2 screens on my Zoom, and I'm still deciding if I like it or not. I was like, you have to use multiple screens. All right, here, actually, I think I can. Let's see if it's a PNG, so it might take a while. Oh, no, it came up. Yeah, and then of course it'll be in this slide, so please do, if you want to pull these slides. And speaking of, so in conclusion, as mentioned earlier, we need your feedback on this series. Please do complete the survey. Please let me pop that in there right now for you. Please do complete this survey. Let us know what you think about this series. We're going to be doing, like I said, our aim is going to be to do one article, at least one article, and at least one app each month this year. It's a big undertaking. So, and then let us know what kind of professional development or support you need to be more effective and support collaborative learning in your classrooms. And again, that could be any modality that you do, in considering the obstacles either from the articles or some of what we talked about today. So thank you again in advance for doing that survey. Just to tell you a little bit of what's coming up, coming this April 4th, we're going to be talking GAP 101. So that is actually going to be Professor Thomas Santamaria. He is our Senior Associate Director of Instructional Technology. He's going to be talking about all the changes that are coming in GAP, so you won't want to miss that. And then we'll have 2 sessions. Oh, also, please note that this is only one session. So this session with Professor Santamaria will only be available at noon. There will be a recording, but certainly if you catch it live, you'll be able to ask him all the questions that you might have. And then finally, applying active learning techniques is our workshop that we're going to be having on April 18th. 2 sessions, one at 8 a.m. and one at noon. Please join us, come learn, and little bit of practical variety for active learning techniques. Again, it's all about student engagement, student participation, and hopefully you'll connect with some of your fellow faculty there while you're there. So